Morning, everybody. Kyle, Lance, I'm filling in for Matt. Matt is out not feeling very well. That crud that's going around, it's gotten everybody in my family. I know it's gotten a lot of people around here. It's at like 48 hour, just down and out. Ugh.
Yeah, I haven't had it too for a couple days here. Yeah. No thanks, don't want it.
Hopefully Matt's feeling better soon and he's back
he's
with
watching.
us. I'm sure he is.
Keep an eye on us.
He has to. He's going to start texting me.
Yeah.
Stop sucking.
I'm way better at this than you.
And you got Lance and I are twinning again today.
Yeah. Yep, twinning.
We gotta just own it, Lance.
I try to make sure that I match at least one person in here.
We gotta make sure.
I think we gotta keep that going now.
Dylan,
really
Robert, thanks for joining as always. You guys are fantastic. How much snow's up in the UP, Robert? So
I would assume a lot.
I think there is a lot. I'm just curious because we were thinking about going up there snowmobiling this weekend, but it's supposed to be in like the 40s.
It's got to be a zoo.
That's not good.
Well, this is not good. Well, for two reasons. One, snow melts really fast when it's 40.
Yep.
And two, snowmobiles use the snow they kick up to keep them cool. Some are air cooled, but when it's 40, it's hard for them to keep up. They really overheat a lot.
Yeah.
And it's not fun. And when you're up there with little kids and trying to cover some ground, and then you got to stop. Like I've been on trips where you have to stop every mile to let your sled cool down.
That's
bad.
no fun.
It's brutal.
So, 110 inches?
110 inches of snow. Yikes. Morning, Travis.
Not even
Morning,
January.
Chase.
110 inches.
That's a lot of snow.
Comment?
Yeah.
I heard they have just absolutely just tons of snow.
Yeah, my brother-in-law went to Michigan Tech.
Yeah, Chase, we're going to be talking about smallmouth here in a minute.
And it's insane how much snow they get in Houghton.
Yeah, that's just crazy.
Absolutely ridiculous.
Yep. Yeah, I was looking at going up to like Ontonagon, which is right on Superior. And it's like 4 hours due north.
We complained down here about a big snowstorm in Green Bay now is 5 inches.
See, and I'm me personally, I'm a snowmobiler. I like snow. I would rather have it be 15, 20 degrees all winter long with tons of snow because winter sucks.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like what we get around here in this Appleton area where it's like -40 for a week, we get some snow, and then it's 40, everything melts. It's like spring every other week where your car's your cars look nasty, you can't clean anything.
Yeah.
Gravel driveways or mud holes. It's just
I like having snow up until this week. Now it can go away. Now my mind completely switches after the holidays to
back to fishing.
Because
you don't ice fish at all, right?
I don't. No.
So are you already in full prep mode for 23?
Yeah, as much as I can be. I'm limited on where all my equipment is at. It's in a storage unit. So this week has been great.
Okay, yep.
I've been in the storage unit every night, but messing with stuff. But when it's cold like it was 2 weeks ago, it's not even.
So you don't bring all your stuff home and Melissa deal with crap all over the living room?
She would kill me. If I leave a sock on the floor in the living room, I get freaking murdered. So
So hooks laying around is not a thing, huh?
No, it's bad enough someone will go through the wash once in a while and she sets them out. But yeah, I don't. I used to bring them all home. All the rods I bring home are in the basement. So
now, do you find like you've been doing this for what, 20 some years now?
Yeah, about 20 years.
I mean, do you find that it's pretty much locked in now? Like you've got your system, is what it is.
Yeah, I'm real anal as far as what I keep in my boat. So I pull all of my tackle out after every trip and restock and pull out what I don't need and only put in for that trip.
And I will tell you guys this that are watching, if you are in the market for a used bass boat, you got to get on Kyle's list because at the end of the year, I'm not kidding, his boats are immaculate.
Yeah,
they look a year, and you fish hard.
Yeah, I blame my dad for that. He instilled in me at a young age, my sister and I both, that clean cars are happy cars. Take care of what you have. You're going to get more money for it when you're done with it, type stuff.
How many days a year do you think you're on the water?
Last year was the least amount in the last 15 years, and it was probably still 100
which is, that's
120 days.
That's a lot for a non-guide.
Yeah.
Right? That's a lot of time on the water, and the boats look like they came off the showroom floor. I'm serious. I'm not, it's impressive. You
got to use it, but you also take care of it.
It's impressive. I'm not going to lie.
Takes care of you, as they say, right?
I get jealous of how nice your boats look. I let you loan my boat that one time. It came back nicer than when you took it. I was like, this is great.
And that's another thing, if you borrow something, bring it back in better condition than you got it.
Absolutely.
Is always the mantra, I guess, of my dad instilled in us.
So I only got to watch a little bit of your guys' show from Wednesday. Let's get into the smallmouth stuff. People really like it. I like it. Why don't we recap real quick within 5 minutes kind of what you guys talked about, and then obviously they can go on Fix TV, watch Wednesday's episode,
Yep,
right,
still
for the
up there.
full deal. But why don't we do a little 5-minute recap between you two, and then we can kind of go from there.
Yeah, let's do it. I think first we start off with, it's always the gear question, right? People want to know
Yep.
about the gear that you were using and kind of went over the finesse tactics, and that's really become popular with smallmouth in the last couple of years. Finesse, tubes, big talk, line, all that kind of stuff. And then it went right into spraying tactics, bed fishing, all that kind of whatever. So if we can recap that a little bit, Kyle.
Yeah, we talked about, again, I talk from my own experiences and what works for me. And when I talk about smallmouth, it's typically geared towards the Great Lakes because that's just what I love doing. And them fish have a certain special spot, right? So we put the question out there, and Chase Skinner actually asked for us to talk about some of them things, like everything Lance just said. So Matt and I and Lance broke it down from all of our perspectives of, the gear we use, tube jigs to swim baits to drop shots, when to do what type stuff. And, we started in, early spring pre-spawn into spawn and then into bed fishing. And then we kind of got to our hour of, what we discussed. We went over rods and reels, and, there was awesome interaction in the chat, which is always great. It's doing this sometimes is a little daunting, and always trying to think of what to say next.
Right.
When people ask a question, it makes it
That's why I
very
just start
fun and
making crude
interactive.
adult jokes sometimes, because
Sometimes it happens.
fills
you have to.
fills in. I heard a couple. If I was in here on Wednesday, there was a couple.
Yeah,
you guys
it's-
just totally missed.
well, sometimes.
So let me ask you this, Kyle. So we talked a lot about Great Lakes, right? That's your forte.
Yeah.
Smallmouth live in the same type of structure, meaning rocks and whatever, pretty much wherever they go.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I was
As
just
long
going
as
to say
it's
that 'cause
accessible.
Chase made the comment about on the Columbia River system.
Yep.
Right. So like I fish smallmouth on river systems all the time. Use a lot of the same tactics you talked about, just because it can relate in both situations.
I was just gonna say, like, what do you think are the major differences between? Well, let's cover rivers first. The river smallmouth, because we got the Wolf River around here, which is huge. A lot of smallies in there. Fox River, a lot of smallies in there. What are the differences you think do we want to start like seasonal movement wise on the river versus the Great Lakes?
The biggest thing for me with smallmouth rivers to lakes, especially Great Lakes to like the Wolf River, is the fish can really be anywhere.
Yeah.
They can be on any structure. They might be on culverts,
I've caught them flipping
Smallmouth.
trees.
flipping trees. They could be on sand drops. They could be in current seams. I mean, you can kind of get away with more mistakes in a way compared to the Great Lakes as far as not needing a
Well,
leader.
there's a lot more options for food. There's a lot more cover options.
You could power fish a lot more. It's one thing I love about fishing rivers at smallmouth is you could pick up a white swim jig and just pretty much fish any river in the world and catch smallmouth.
My favorite's flipping them in the trees.
Oh, it's so much fun.
I honestly, I like bed fishing too. I know you guys talked a little bit about that. It's fun, right?
Oh, it's a blast.
People can say what they want, but people have been catching fish on beds for a really, really, really long time.
Forever.
And the Door County system doesn't seem to be getting any worse, and they've been doing it forever. So
Doesn't
anyway,
affect
moving
it a
on.
little
I'm not trying to get
That's
paced.
a whole nother show with
Right.
a lot of controversy.
But I'm telling you what, if you've never like flipped a tree with your heavy flipping stick and a bass jig and pulling out 4.5, 5 pound small, he's like, it's totally different than the largemouth because those fish don't want to move. It's awesome.
It's so much fun. There's a lake in northern Wisconsin that they just live on wood, and you pick up a heavy flipping stick with braid and
Just give it to them.
a 1 ounce piece of tungsten and just flip, and you're catching smallmouth.
But the difference, I mean, like smallmouth, largemouth, right? Like you put a hook into a big largemouth, or like when we were in El Salto last year, you get a 9 pounder, that fish, it's like setting hook into a log.
Yeah.
I didn't get any of them, so
Oh yeah, that's right. He didn't catch any. I caught him. Anyway, no, but like a 4 pound smallie is not a 4 pound smallie and a 4 pound largemouth are not equivalent.
no, they're not.
Like a 4 pound largemouth is gonna move. 4 pound smallie is just like nope.
No, you're going to set the hook, and they're either going to come out from the other side of the limb to jump, or they're going to come out and jump on the other side of your boat.
Yeah, it's
They're insane.
I've only had that a couple times in the Wolf where they were like buried in the trees.
Travis Goss said Keith Carson did that on the Bago chain for the MPFL event. He did. He was flipping trees.
Okay.
He had one tree up on Poigan that he kept cycling back to, and every time he went to it, he'd catch 3.5, 4 pound smallmouth. It was
Absolute riot.
awesome.
But I agree with you. There's a lot more habitat options for a smallmouth in a river.
You get a lot more crossover in tactics as well, where a half-ounce flipping jig typically is a largemouth greenfish type bait. You will catch smallmouth on that as well.
Well, they're one of the ultimate predators in the water.
Yep.
Smallmouth are like those fish are aggressive. They're angry,
Yep.
right? They're territorial.
They're
They're like little mini orcas swimming around.
Yeah. You don't need to finesse them as much in rivers either. Typically a river's dirtier.
Yeah, I was just gonna say water clarity plays huge.
Current keeps them fish constantly moving. So they're not following a bait for 30, 40 feet before they decide, okay, that's real, and eat it.
Well,
it's a reaction.
Well,
so
one thing I was going to say is they tend to reload back up in those typical spots on the river. Like I'll fish a river system, come back in an hour, they're there, where I haven't had as much time in Door County, but okay, I know I caught them on this break. They're not there anymore. There's just so much more water to
what I
move
was going
around
to say,
it.
the water
No, it's there.
clarity is huge from a pressure standpoint. What I mean by that is the lake fish, you get near them and they can get real spooky. Like I heard Kyle talking about the color of the fish, right? If the fish is real dark and black in color, they're real relaxed and that kind of environment. Well, when you get a lot of pressure on a clear body of water, there's a lot more chance those fish are going to be stressed out from getting pushed around and stuff.
Right.
River fish aren't like that. River fish have constant flow. They're constantly getting ahead, but you get hit in the head with stuff coming down river, and there's always boat traffic because sections of the Wolf River, for instance, are only a couple hundred feet wide or less.
Yep.
Right, where there's constant boat traffic going over their heads all the time. They just don't seem to get pressured the same way as a lake fish.
Yeah, there's some guys that, are
They're not as
phenomenal.
susceptible to the pressure, is what I should say.
Right. And there's guys that are phenomenal fishermen in that situation. Like you take little sturgeon, for example, in spring, the cedars, just little sturgeon. There's sometimes 50, 80 to 100 boats in there. And there's guys that just weave their way through and don't. Nobody else is catching shit.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But these guys come through. They know the ditches. They know the depressions that they're sitting in. And they don't want this cast, that cast. They want that one. So they'll throw right at the back of somebody's motor because the guy is sitting on top of that depression and he has no idea.
Now, do you think they're also doing something different?
No.
You think they're throwing the same stuff as everybody else, same colors as everybody else?
Meat and potatoes. Door County smallmouth are meat and potatoes. It's green pumpkin, dark melon for tubes. There's amber colors are getting really, really popular up there. But if you go up there to green pumpkin or dark melon, you're gonna catch bass.
So those guys going through all this, everyone else is struggling. It's literally just the spot on the spot type of a
It's
deal.
the spot on the spot that smallmouth goes to every year. Every time it wants to eat, it swims to that ditch.
Okay.
It swims there. You have to have your bait sitting there.
Because I've always thought that those guys are doing something maybe just a little. Because I've seen them, you see them catching it.
What they're doing different is they're confident in where that bait's sitting, and they let it sit there. Once you have that bait in that ditch and it sits there, don't move it. Just let it sit there. When that smallmouth comes in, it's coming into that sand spot
to eat
because they're all sand spots surrounded by rock. Oh, there's something in there. I'm going to go eat it because it's food. You just got to have the patience to wait it out.
And like a lot of
have that.
but walleye
that's true.
fishing is the same way. It's never usually about how you're fishing; it's where you're fishing, right? Like it's never about what you're trolling or what you're pulling behind your boards. Typically, sometimes there's a little difference, right? But it's usually about the spot you're in more so than how you're doing it. You know what I mean? Like fish they're not the brightest creatures. You're not dealing with a whitetail.
Right.
Like Matt and I we get on our whitetail tangents a lot. You're not dealing with a 5-year-old animal who's learned and functions a lot.
There's one of them confident guys right there just said it, Jesse Van Lannen.
Yep.
He is one of the guys that drive me absolutely crazy on the bay because him and Jesse do that.
Okay.
They are confident where they are putting their baits, they're going to get bit.
Yep.
And they will come into a group of 30, 40 boats and freaking smash them.
Well, and what I was kind of what I was
spot.
trying to get at is I think for if you're a newer angler or whatever, it's really easy to get sucked into the wall of plastics, let's say, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to not sell stuff, but it's very easy to get sucked into. I need all of this crazy stuff, and all of that stuff has its place in time,
Yeah, it does.
right? It all has its place in
And,
time.
there's 50 YouTube videos out there that prove it.
Oh,
Right?
100%.
Like you watch it, you get sucked
right.
in.
And I'm
I
not
need
saying
that.
that some other guy is not going to beat you on black, like throwing black tubes or whatever.
Yep.
All I'm saying is that usually if you take what you're most confident in and just worry about finding the spots
Yeah.
and throw the same thing, but throw it everywhere instead of throwing 50 things in one spot.
Yeah. There's guys that in Jesse and Ted are that team that they don't do a whole lot of practicing. They'll, as far as fishing
Right.
during the week of practicing for an event, They go out and just look at areas.
So let's talk about the spot on the spot, right? So approaching a new body of water, you find what you think is a spot on the spot. Are you finding that because you caught a fish there, or because you're seeing something visually on your electronics? Like if you're in 4 feet of water, sometimes it's hard to find a 1 foot ditch with your electronics, right? Because you're moving around, wind, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So is it more of a thing like if you're trying to break down and find that spot on the spot, are you just marking every time you catch a fish? Okay, I caught a fish here. Let's see if there's a pattern and start breaking it down that way, or is it more just visual cues or something?
In practice on a new body of water for me is I will mark what I think fish are going to be on. So if I'm side imaging down a flat and I see a boulder that's bigger than the rest, if there's current in that body of water, one side of that boulder is going to be deeper than the other.
Yep.
99.9% of the time, that's going to be that spot on that spot. So yeah, you're going to catch fish off of that boulder, but if your bait's sitting in that deep spot, every time that fish comes around that boulder, he's going to eat it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's multiple ways for that, right? So you go through and you mark every fish you catch on this flat. Well, you might just be confusing yourself.
Right.
Because fish, smallmouth are roamers.
Yep.
When they're not on that spot, they're cruising around and they're going to eat. They're opportunistic feeders. They're going to eat.
Yep.
They have to. It's in their
what they
genetics. That's what they do.
Mm-hmm.
If you see a pot of smallmouth cruising around a flat, if you stay with them long enough, you're going to get one to bite.
Yep.
And to find that spot on the spot, you don't necessarily want to mark and waypoint every spot, but just make mental notes of it and just know that I need to move around this area and catch as many as I can and then go back and look at them areas like, okay, here's why that fish was there. Here's why I caught 2 fish back-to-back casts.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and
Usually the pattern will jump out at you
yes,
if you're paying attention. And
Yep.
it's a little stuff, right? Like Kyle's saying, it's little stuff like which side of the rocks are they on? Is it through the sun, the shade, the
love this.
current?
The bay guys are coming out. No,
that's
Bob
good.
Wetley's out here too. You know,
I was
Bob's
just gonna say the cast angle.
Yeah, Bob says you can catch you can fish individual rocks or a single ditch for hours and catch them every cast. And it's so true up there spring, summer, and fall. And once you know them ditches and you know them areas, it's literally a race the morning of a tournament to get
Well, I
your
think
boat
the
angled
answer-
to that spot.
Lance's question is it's a lot of time on the water. Like this doesn't just happen
absolutely.
magically.
Yeah, it
Like
takes
you've
time.
got to put your time in, and for some of these guys, it's years.
Yeah.
This isn't a month.
Yep.
This isn't. You might stumble on one, right? But this isn't. I took a week's vacation, went up there, and I found one. I mean, you
it's
might,
years.
right? But a lot of this is years and years and years of work and time on the water and divorces and well,
So what? Well, I love it when Melissa asks me, "You're going fishing tomorrow?" Yep. What time are you going to be home? Dark.
when I get home. When
Yeah,
you see me is
yeah,
when I'm
that-
home.
When
that
it's dark
is
out, I'll
the-
be on my way home.
That is the question.
You'll see me before the sun comes up
That
again.
is the question.
Gary's on here now too. You know, there's some phenomenal smallmouth
Morning,
fishermen
Gary.
on here that I have learned a ton from. You know, it's time on the water, and you know, Jesse said one thing: boat position and cast angle. That is, you know, you can have that ditch to yourself, but the boat that's on the inside of it throwing out is the one that's going to catch them, and you can't get bit. It's a very, very infuriating, frustrating thing to be a part of to see. And then
And that's all about how those fish position on that structure,
Yep.
right? Because they're
Well-
well, Gary talked a little bit about that in his proficiency one, where how they set up on the current breaks, right? Well, those fish are facing one way for a reason because that's the way they're going to eat, right? I mean, that's what you're talking about.
Yep.
They're facing that way, and if that bait comes from behind them or sideways, or it's not natural, let's put it that way, they're not going to do it. They're not going to fire.
Right. And the cool part about Door County is you can get in these shallow areas when the sun's high and it's calm, and you can see these fish do this. You don't have to be fishing to find that spot on the spot. You can go through a ditch and spook every bass out of it, spin around, power pull down, and just sit there.
Just wait for them to come back.
They're going to come back.
They're gonna come back.
They're
Yep.
going to
But
show. They're
there
going to
for a
show
reason.
you where they want to be.
Yep.
And then it's a matter of wind direction, current, and all the other factors of getting them fish to bite.
For sure. So I think we kind of talked about what we talked about in the first show. Now the natural progression was going to be once we get out of the spawn, post spawn. Now we're kind of moving into the dog days of summer. That kind of thing is where the next show is heading, right?
Yep.
Is that kind of
Yep.
what we're going for?
Yeah, we were talked through the spawn, and then we were kind of going into that post spawn, post spawn into summertime. We were just covering through the cycle, and post spawn's not fun. Post spawn on the bay, it can be really tough unless you know where, like you understand what the fish are doing. So after a spawn, they just want to get out, typically deeper first break type stuff, and they just sulk. They're not roaming around, they're just recovering.
Yep.
And there's one guy that's really freaking good at catching them fish that time when that happens, and that's Gary.
Yeah.
He is really freaking good at catching post-spawn smallmouth in the bay. Pre-spawn, I don't want to say it's easy, but it's not hard.
It's definitely easier for
once
sure.
Once you figure it out. Spawn is very easy as long as you can see in the water. Post-spawn is really hard. It's really, really tough. It's frustrating.
Are they more spread out post-spawn? Do they really kind of spread out on those breaks?
They do, and they're not predictable.
So like pre-spawn, would you say you're taking 90% of the fish and putting them 10% in the water?
Yeah, absolutely.
Post-spawn, you're not flipping it, but you're getting close, right?
Yeah, pre-spawn, once you know where they're coming to, and you live in that area of where they're coming to, it's easier. Post-spawn, you don't know exactly where they came from. You know where they came from the spawn, but you don't know where they're going to at that point. They could be weed lines, they could be on deep boulders, they could be they're everywhere. And that's the time of the year when you can physically see fish that just don't care. They're not going to bite. They're just relaxing. They're just chilling. It's frustrating.
They got to eat at some point, right?
To be honest, I kind of avoid the bay from second week of June until August.
Is that just because you're lazy?
No, it's not as fun to me.
Is it a lazy thing?
Right. Oh, yeah. It's not as easy. I know that.
And then the rivers are really good. Post-spawn on a river is totally different than post-spawn on indoor county. Post-spawn in a river is a ton of fun because they get tucked up into that wood. They get tucked up into them spots, get out of the current and relax. Well, then they're really predictable. Now I know where they are. Or on the bay, they can just be anywhere.
Anywhere. Spread out.
Until they start moving into their summertime.
So when you're targeting post-spawn fish on the bay, same deal, right? Tubes, drop
yeah,
shot.
It's more of a reaction bite then. You want to get them to react.
Okay.
So then the A-rig really starts to come in.
Because you want to cover a lot of water, right? Like you're saying,
Yep.
you don't know, they're not as predictable. They can be in a way bigger area. They could be probably, how deep water are we talking? Because when they're spawning, they're anywhere from 15 to 2 feet.
Yeah,
Right?
I would say 15 or deeper.
So you're talking deeper water.
And some of them do it
Can't see
shallow
'em.
too. Some of
Right.
them just sit shallow as well.
Right, I'm just, you know what I mean? It's fishing,
Generalizing,
right?
it's deeper, yeah.
You could be out there someday and some guy's going to be watching this and be like, oh, I caught him post-spawn in a foot of water. This is bullshit. Right? But I mean, like,
Right.
fish move. Like, we're just talking generals, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you're talking, like, where Lance is coming from is you want to be able to cover a lot of water. Like,
Yep.
you're really trying to move. You got your trolling motor a little faster. You're really trying to cover water.
Pre-spawn on your electronics, you see them grouped up. You'll see visually and on your electronics, you'll see hundreds of fish in groups, in pods of fish. Pods of smallmouth. I'll throw a funny jab that some guys will get. Wolf packs up, checking temp is basically what they are. You get giant wolf packs of smallmouth come up shallow, up, it's not ready yet, and they go back out. And then they come back and they go cycle back and forth.
Now it's pre-spawn you're talking.
That's pre-spawn.
Yep.
During the post-spawn, you might see one fish on your live scope. You may see 2 or 3 together, but you're not seeing packs of them. Once they're done spawning, they spread out to get away from each other, and then they break before, as they go into their summer patterns, and they group back up.
Which makes sense. Like if I would want to relax, I don't
Leave
want to
me
be
alone.
around you guys.
Yep,
Like,
leave
get
me
away from me,
alone.
right?
Absolutely.
You know, it's pretty logical when you think about it.
Right,
Just
so-
gotta think about it.
The spawn lasts for how long? Because this is also, I don't know if you guys talked about this, but the spawn lasts a lot longer than people think.
Yeah, there's a lot of waves. Door County, there's 5, 6, 7 waves of fish some years.
Right.
There was fish on beds. What year was that? Was that last year or the year before? In August in northern Door County.
Now, is that all dictated on water temp?
Yeah.
Okay. So when the spawn's over, those fish go into those post-spawn areas. What water temp or what kind of triggers the summer now? We're kind of past that post-spawn where they're going to start grouping back up again.
In my opinion, it's when the water is mid 60s.
Okay.
60 to 65 degrees when that happens. And that could happen really quick. It could be like that in May.
Right.
But then fish are up shallow doing their deal. So then as that water continues to warm, it's not to the warmest yet, but it's starting to raise every day, into 60s, 65, 67,
And now you're talking
68.
surface temp, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So, depending on, again, current and a bunch of different wind and a bunch of different things, different parts of the bay, different bays, different areas of Door County warm up faster, stay cold longer. As fish on beds around Chambers Island in August, there could have been a bunch of north wind that kept that water cold, where they just kept going back and forth.
See, and I think that's the biggest thing. I don't know if you guys talked about water temp much, because it doesn't really matter as much in the spring. But I grew up fishing the Great Lakes, more on the salmon and trout side, and water temp's everything. And people coming from inland lakes or rivers where water temp doesn't fluctuate very much don't typically seem to relate to water temperature like a Great Lakes angler does. And that's why I was trying to bring that up, is I think it's something important for people to look at. Like, I've always got my water temp on my graph, and it's usually one of the bigger numbers I have, because it's such a key to how those fish are moving or where they're going to be, trying to locate them, is seasonally based on water temperature, right? We're on the Great Lakes side, the salmon and trout side, you're looking for that 40-degree surface temperature.
Sure. And
you're looking for 40 degrees in July, if you can find it, right? Because if what happens on the Great Lakes a lot is the wind, right? There's a lot of wind, and we got a lot of deep water off of these areas that we're fishing, where, Kyle's fishing some of these bays he talked about where it's 15, 20 feet. It'll get 30 feet in the bay. Well, you get on the outside edge of that bay and it's 300 or 200 feet, right? Well, 200 feet down never warms up. 200 feet down is not and that's why I mentioned surface temp.
It's always cold, yeah.
Right. Surface temp can be 65, 200 feet down is 40. Well, if you get a real strong wind that blows that water in, you could go to an area where yesterday was 60, today is 40. Those fish are going to not be where you think they are. And that plays a huge deal.
The Sturgeon Bay Shipping Canal is a perfect example of that.
And that could change hourly.
Man, my wife and I went out on a Wednesday and fished the shipping canal, and we had a tournament there on Saturday, and I get there Saturday, and we caught them really well on Wednesday. Get there Saturday, the water's 48 degrees, and it looks like the ocean.
Yep.
Like, it's just aqua blue, just beautiful looking water, but had a bass in it.
Yep. Well, and I'm sure you've done this, and Jesse just said water temps everything pre-spawn.
Yeah.
I think water temps everything a lot of the time. Like, it can really help you a lot if you pay attention to it. Because there's been tournaments, again, walleye fishing for me, where I had things going in practice. We had the wrong winds, northeast winds, just shut the bay down. Not shut it down, but bring all the cold water down from the Chambers Island area and all that stuff. And you get to your spot and it's 15 degrees colder than it was. You got to figure out something else, because whatever you thought you had going is instantly toast.
Yeah, it's happened to all of us. We all, everybody that fishes tournaments in Door County, or just fishes Door County in general, you'll run into little sturgeon in the back where you think they're going to be stacked up and the water's 10 degrees colder and dirty than it was the day before. You just turn around and leave. And
you have to do it instantly. You have to trust that this is junk now. I got to figure out something else.
Well, and to be honest, in Door County in the spring, if there's no boats back there, there's no bass back there.
Right.
It's
right.
It's just the way it is now with the pressure that's out there.
And Daryl says he's a river guy and water temp drives everything. If you're a new angler, water temp's huge. Like, learn the water temps, learn how the fish, whatever you're chasing, panfish, walleyes, bass, doesn't matter. They're all dictated by water temp, a lot of it.
Yep. Take notes. Don't be afraid to take notes.
Well, a lot of it isn't the fish as much as what they're chasing.
Right.
Like a smallmouth isn't in a river isn't as finicky as the bait fish that it's chasing. The bait fish are always searching the warmer water. I mean, they're this big, right? They don't have a lot of body mass to try to
need that warm water to stay alive.
They need it or they die, right? The bass don't really care. I mean, they care. They might not eat as much if it's cold or vice versa, right? But they're really dictated by water based on what they're eating.
Yeah, for me, summertime, post-spawn into summertime is not my favorite time of year out there. Like I said, I rarely out there from mid-June to August. The month of July, I kind of just, unless I have a reason to be out there, I just go other places and, fish the river a bunch or fish wherever the next tournament's taking me type thing. But staying on smallmouth, like, if my next tournament's taking me to Green Lake, I'm going to look for smallmouth first. Now you go to a place like Green Lake that's crazy pressured. Pressure. 15 years ago, there's nobody there.
Right.
You could fish there any day of the week, and all you see is trout fishermen or occasional walleye fishermen. Now it's just, bass tournaments has just been insane out there. And you go there, and it went from a blast, catch to, well, man, I can't even, struggling to catch a limit in that place now.
And that's been the last couple of years, right?
Yeah, for me especially. Like, I think last year, one tournament out there, we finally weighed a limit, and that's been for 2 years, so probably 6-7 tournaments. It's just been, I can't figure them out again. It's just, and
No, can you not figure them out, or did the numbers go down?
no, they're there because there's still big bags getting brought in. There's still, there's guys still catching them that have them figured out. And
Okay.
I'm not,
they've adapted and you haven't.
yeah. And I'm not
They
a
being the
crowd.
fish.
I'm not a crowd fisherman either. I'm not going to go look for boats. Like
Same.
I know where one team has been doing well, but I'm not going to go sit next to them and they figured it out. They deserve to kick my ass.
Yeah,
I mean,
cool.
that's just kind of the way I fish. I want to find my own deal and prove to the fish that I can beat them that day rather than sitting on somebody else's stuff.
So you said post spawn A-rigs are huge. What other kind of tactics are you thinking? I mean, spy baiting.
Yep, spy baiting, jerk baiting is still really good year round. You know, the jerk bait gets tagged as a springtime only bait,
Yep.
but it's catch fish on it year round up in any clear water.
Anything else the guy should be looking at trying that post spawn?
Always a Kitech type swim bait.
You can catch fish on that any time of the year.
Year round. Like
I've got that tied on all the time.
Bump the size up a little bit. In the springtime is small, and then as the year goes, it gets bigger and bigger, right?
Fish always eat minnows.
Yeah, I like
They have not stopped.
Always.
Yep.
yeah, and that's what jerkbait is too. Like the alewife population on the bay is coming back big time.
Yeah, they're yep.
So that's why a lot of them baits are still good to throw a jerkbait, and that's probably why they eat the A-rig as good as they do.
The salmon numbers have been down. That's why they always are coming back so hard.
Yep, makes sense.
That's 100% how it works.
And that's understanding the whole system.
Yep.
Like if a bass fisherman would be failing himself if he doesn't know what the other populations are doing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one thing I'm curious on, and maybe you might be able to answer this, Brian, being more of that, you know, growing up on the Great Lakes on the Michigan side, is we used to catch a lot of brown trout in the bays in the springtime. I bet you it's been 10 years since I caught one.
Well, it's because the alewife. So what happens? It's always a cyclical, right? Alewife numbers are huge. They because all the salmon, not all salmon are naturally reproduced. A lot of salmon in the Great Lakes are dumped in, right? They dump them in Cedar River too, up on the northern part of the bay. And actually, a lot of those deep marks you see, like up by Washington Island, Green Island, a lot of that, those are all salmon. Like when you're in 100 feet of water and everyone's like, "Oh, what are those down there?" A lot of those are salmon. Anyway, I digress. So, but when the alewife numbers are high, they start dumping more salmon in. Salmon lives 4 years. That's it. They only live 4 years. So when these guys are catching these 40-pound monsters, that's a 4-year-old fish. And they swim back up the rivers and die or whatever. They dump a bunch of salmon in. Salmon eat everything because salmon literally never stop eating. Because you don't get to be 40 pounds in 4 years in 40-degree water if you just eat. All you do is eat.
Yep.
Salmon eat, and then they eat some more, and then when they're done eating, they keep eating.
Yep.
They literally just eat. So anyway, so then when the alewife number, when the salmon population gets too large, they always start decreasing, and then, you know what I mean? That's just that's how the whole system works. To answer your question about browns in the bays, I don't know if that's just pressure. I mean, back in the day when you're talking about it, like I fished up there was... If you like, we used to troll shorelines for browns, like northern on both sides. You'd see 2-3 boats a day, maybe. If you're like, that was it. Now, if you do that same kind of thing, you'll see 100. Like, there's just so many more people out there. I think the boats are better than they've ever been. Electronics, obviously, but it's just the boats themselves, right? Like when we were younger, like if you had an 18-foot aluminum boat with 150 on it, you were like woo! You know what I mean?
Got them hand down rivers too.
Oh, right. Like you were dealing with it. Well, now these guys got 21-foot Rangers and whatever, fiberglass boats, 300 horse motors. They can go out and stuff they never used to be able to go out in safely, right? I just think there's a ton more pressure on that in those inland bays. And my guess is those fish are just not as tolerant. And they've just moved out and said, I'm not dealing with 100 boats sitting on top of me because I don't need to be there. Like a brown trout spawns really early. Like they spawn, I'm pretty sure they spawn when the northern spawn, which is like almost under the ice.
Under the ice, basically.
Like, you know what I mean? Like they're spawning almost under the ice, if not under the ice. And then they get out.
You said that those are getting stacked as well, brown trout.
I don't know much about the brown trout. I agree with Kyle. Like I don't catch them up there as much as I used to.
Okay.
Like we used to go fishing specifically for browns.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, Robert Kloss has a point on this. He believes that stocking of browns on the bay has decreased a lot I feel like the only brown stocking is a Marinette.
And that could be right.
They have a big brown trout tournament up in Marinette, and that could be that organization that is still doing that.
But I do think that I do think pressure has a lot to do with some of these fish where you don't see them as much. Where a smallmouth has no choice.
Yep.
Like a lot of them are going to go shallow and spawn. There's lots that spawn deeper. I get that, but they're going to go into those bays because that's their habitat. That's where they have to go to spawn. It's just like the walleyes on the Wolf River. Like they're going to swim upriver and they're going to go into those marshes, and there's going to be a line of boats there trying to catch them, and that's just what's going to happen. Where I think maybe the browns, you don't see them as much because you're not out there under the ice or that early, right? Because the smallies aren't out, they're not in there yet.
Yep.
And then the pressure, they're just like screwing them out. Like I don't want to deal with it.
Right.
Yeah, browns, and I don't throw jerkbait as much as I used to, and now the jerkbaits are a lot different than they used to be as well. That profile might not be the same as what they like.
Yeah, we used to catch them on floating Rapalas. We just troll them. That's how we used to catch all of them.
Yeah, there's one stretch in Sand Bay that you could almost call your shot. If you went through that area in the spring throwing a jerkbait, that you were going to at least see one.
Right.
And now I go through there just for fun, trying to catch one, and we don't even see it.
Well, and not knowing, like I'm assuming that the browns eat the same food, right? But the smallmouth population exploded when the gobies came in because they'll eat them. But maybe browns won't. I'm assuming a brown would eat it, but maybe they don't want to. Maybe that's not their preferred.
They don't want to feed off the bottom.
Their preferred forage. They don't live on the bottom. Browns are typically more of a cruising, like open water fish. So they're cruising a little bit more. Maybe maybe that's a part of it. I don't really know, but
Yep.
And then the walleyes exploded too. Walleye fishing was nothing like back then, like it is now. And walleyes again are a huge predator. They eat anything that moves.
Yep.
And they could have eaten out some of the forage that the browns liked as well.
That's a good point. Chase Skinner asked what the setup is for a spy bait. I use the same rod and reel I do for a swim bait. Typically, I'll just drop down to a 6-pound leader for my leader line. That's all. Really, the only change is because you want that thing super.
Well, and my guess is if you've never fished
level.
a spy bait, not knowing anything about whoever's fishing it, is you're fishing it too fast.
Yes. Yep.
That would be the one thing I would tell you. Not knowing anything about anybody who's fishing it, I almost guarantee you're fishing it too fast.
Yep. If you pull it out of the water and it sounds like a helicopter, you're fishing it way too fast.
I mean, it's super fun to fish. It's super painful to fish as well.
It is. Actually, there was
you lose a lot.
There was a gentleman yesterday that came in and was talking to me about him. He said, "What did he say? If you find patience, you'll find confidence with your spy bait."
Yes.
And I'm like, wax on, wax off. Like it was like a fortune cookie. Like
it's
I like
true.
Mr.
It
Miyagi.
It actually
there.
takes you really far back to throwing like the old countdown Rapalas
Sure.
because they don't have a bill on them. They're not going to dive. You've got to learn your sink rate, which is why the 6-pound test has a lot of things. It's also it's way more finesse. Can't see in the clear water. All of those things, but it also changes your fall rate, right?
Yeah.
On the bait, so you got to learn the fall rate of these baits based on, excuse me, the leader you're throwing to figure out how deep you're fishing it, right? And then it's just a lot like that where, the old countdowns where they wouldn't dive. You had to kind of know what speed to reel them at to keep them at a consistent depth and all that kind of stuff. It just reminds me a lot of fishing those old countdowns.
The biggest thing I found with a spy bait is you have to keep that bait level.
Yes. Well, that's what I'm talking about.
If that bait is rising, like I'm saying, like the strike zone part of your cast, right? You make the longest cast you could possibly make. That's another thing. I said it last show. Cast that bait as far as you can cast it on every cast. It's never going to hurt you unless you're target fishing.
I got one other time it would hurt you, but I won't talk about that one.
Pick it on me?
No.
Oh.
There's an actual time where there's a certain, you and I've fished it, where longer casts aren't good.
Okay, well,
we'll talk into
that.
Yeah, I know what you guys are talking about. But anyways.
You don't want that bait rising. All your
Right.
Natural. You want it natural.
A huge percentage of your bites are going to come from the end of your cast to, say, here.
Yep.
Here being where your bait starts to rise towards the boat.
And that's where you'll see if you watch guys on these live streams like the MPFL Live, you'll watch them where they fish real, and then all of a sudden they get to that point where it starts to come up and one more cast.
They know they're done.
They want that bait and that strike, that good area as long as possible.
And I know we beat it to death, but that's where like the electronics come in, live scope and stuff. Like you can just watch it the whole way. Like, the learning curve is that much quicker when you got the technology with it.
Gary makes a good point with the smelt.
Yep.
The smelt is coming back, but it's not what it was.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm sure they've adapted, but if that's their favorite food, mean, if all of a sudden the gobies disappeared and the crayfish disappeared, the smallies will start disappearing in the bay too.
Yep.
That's just how that works. But no, I think that's right. Where you watch these guys, if you really watch, like if people started watching the live stream stuff, like the MPFL we produce, right? If they really watched it for not fish catches, but watched it for the hows, which is what we're trying with that Proficient series.
Yep.
It's not as much about the fish catches as the how is this guy breaking this down and how is he doing it. But I think like people want entertainment, which is great. That's fantastic. But if you watch the really good guys, the Keith Carsons, the Gary Adkins, you watch those guys, I guarantee you every one of them, when that bait starts coming up like you're talking, they just burn that thing in and go again. They're not fishing that thing real slow all the way to the boat. I guarantee they never waste their time with that because of what you're talking about.
Yep.
I mean, it translates, like we saw it with dock fishermen, right? Like you throw it under the dock, that's where you want it. Once it's out from the dock,
Burn it
in, throw it right back
Yep,
under there.
absolutely.
Like it's the same, just breaking it down.
I mean,
different
and what
aspect
the argument will be is, well, I've caught one right by the boat before. Yep, you're right. You caught one.
You've caught one. Yep.
You've caught 75 out there.
Yep.
You caught one up by the boat. I'm gonna keep it out there.
Yep.
To stay on the spy bait thing, Chase, I like the duos.
Yeah,
Duo
me too.
Realis. I really haven't found one that for me is better than that one yet. So
Now they have two, right? They got the regular, and then they got the G
The
series,
G-Fix.
the
Yeah.
G Fix,
G-Fix.
which is meant for baitcasters, correct?
yeah, they're heavier. It's a bigger weight transfer, so
But it's what it's meant for is for throwing with a baitcaster.
Yep. And I do play with that a little bit actually with a baitcaster, depending on how much I'm going to throw it, because it's just so much more.
I agree, but I have a hard time going slow with
Well,
my
it's hard to
baitcaster.
throw a light line on a baitcaster.
Right.
It's not easy, even with as good as they are now. It's not easy.
Yeah, I know I get picked on a lot, but whatever. I'm just going to throw a spinning rod as much as I can because I'm just more comfortable with it. And I can control my speed better with a spinning reel than I can with a baitcaster.
Yep.
I mean, again, that's just because I've been using them for longer.
Right.
But my spy baits, I'm throwing spinning reels, 3000 series spinning reels, big spools, so I can get that real long cast.
Yep.
Long as rod as I can get that sucker out there.
Yep.
And they cast awesome. I mean,
Yeah, they cast like rockets,
yeah, they're like little bullets.
especially when the knot breaks and they just keep going. That's
Yeah.
typically pretty cool because you can't find them because they sink.
Yeah, right. No, but if you've never fished a spy bait, they're fun. And it
blast.
could be that difference maker on those days where you see those cruising packs, even pre-spawn, where they've just seen everything else, just something different, where it just almost pisses them off because it just sits there and just floats in their face.
Yep.
They get cranky.
It's fun to watch on live scope too because you can see a spy bait on your live scope really good.
Oh yeah. And in the Great Lakes, you'll watch that fish come out of nowhere, 30, 40, 50 feet away. It'll come after because it'll
But
see
typically, if you're not getting bit on a spy bait, it's one of three things. Line diameter is too high, they can see it because they got great eyes. You're going too fast, or it's not staying level enough.
Yep.
Would you say those are the three?
Agree 100%.
Those are three deals.
The frustrating
And your speed and the angle of the bait are 100% tied together.
Yeah.
Right? Like your retrieve speed and being able to keep that bait level in the water are 100% tied together. Actually, all three are because the line diameter is going to change all of that as well.
And it's the same thing with a small swim bait as well. With an 1/8 ounce 2.8, if you're not reeling that super slow, if you're reeling it too fast, you're not going to get bit. Like we talked on the last show when we were up north, where we were catching them. It might not have been the color.
Right.
It might have been
Angle. It could have been
angle,
a million different
speed,
things.
you know.
Well, I think
retrieve
rigging the
speed
plastics too is huge.
Oh yeah, if it,
Like it's got to be straight. It can't be swimming cockeyed sideways or kinked this way. It's got to be straight.
yeah.
And I think that's one of those things where like guys like you just forget it because you just
do it, right?
Well, but you've gotten good at. I need to get to this rib in the bait and it's going to be straight, right?
Yep.
Where the other guys like me that don't fish as much as you might take 3 or 4 times to get it right. You get frustrated. You're like, okay, screw it. I'm just going to go. Well, you're better off practicing that and getting it right.
Yeah. Especially like I use for my swim baits, I use a screw lock head, and it's very important with a screw lock head because that head, the bait spins on that from time to time. It doesn't stay locked. It stays locked to the head,
Yep.
but it will actually twist on the hook. So you have to check that after every cast.
Yep. And I think it's important to know too, what we're talking about is catching fish when they're not wanting to eat.
Right.
Like when they're hungry, they're going to eat anyway. You could take that Kitech, hook it through the tail, throw it out there, and they're going to eat it going backwards.
Yeah. There's days
You're talking about like
there's days you don't even need the paddle tail on it and they'll eat it.
right, exactly. I think it's important for everybody to know. I mean, we got some pros in here watching, and that's awesome. But there's a lot of people that watch these and aren't Gary's and you.
It's about education, right? And then my video that I did for Proficient is I break that tube down on why I do it that way. And that's exactly what you're trying to do. And I think that's what this whole conversation is about, and why Chase asked us to talk about this, is to get our opinions, right? And why we do that. You know, Stu Martell, what's up, buddy?
What's up, Stu?
One thing that just infuriates me with a spy bait is them hooks are so small.
Yeah, they are.
And you lose so many fish.
Now, so here's
I'm to the point where I don't even throw it in a tournament anymore.
Okay, so now you're not gonna like this, but I think that's because you're a bass guy. Just hear me out. So I fish them like a walleye guy, and I almost lose none.
With a lighter rod, you're saying?
Lighter rod. I don't overdo because you got to play them out a little bit more, right? Like when I troll the harnesses back when I fished, I mean, I was pulling number 10 trebles on the back of my curl harness.
Does that mean I got to use Fox River rods?
No.
Okay, good.
No, but I'm just just hear me out. Like I used to have number 10 treble hooks on the back of my curl harnesses because it's super gin clear water, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm catching 8, 9, 10 pound walleyes on those, and they're getting in there. But if you can't horse them like a bass.
All right.
You've got to fish it differently. Not only the rod, you need a little more bend to it, but how you fight that fish has got to be calmer. Which, and maybe I'm just being honest.
No, there's a lot of truth to that. The flip side for the bass to walleye thing is that walleye comes up eating something super slow.
Yep.
But
that's how that bass is eating that spy bait.
It is. But as soon as that bass eats that spy bait, it's going that way.
But they don't.
As soon as you set the hook or move
they don't.
They go to the
Okay, so here's the difference. Now, again, I am far from a pro, but I don't lose a lot of bass on spy baits. So when I set the hook on a spy bait, it's always sweeping, and then I keep my rod tip low, like you do all the time. But that I don't reel real fast either. Again, this is a walleye thing.
You let the rod.
Because when I set a hook into a big walleye, everything's very slow and methodical when you're walleye fishing. It's you've seen enough of this walleye fishing now. Right? It's you set the hook. I know, right? I get it.
So I mean,
but it's real slow and methodical, and you let the rod do the work, and you don't put a lot of pressure on that fish. And I do think that's why the bass guys struggle with some of these finessier tactics, because they want that big power hook set, and they want to crank on it, and and it just doesn't work.
Maybe that rod needs to not have braid on it.
So the correlation is right. Finesse techniques, finesse landing, power techniques, power landing. I mean, is there a correlation there? Like, do you try to get the fish into the boat the same way that you're trying to work the bait, depending on what you're doing? Finesse?
I don't think so. I think every landing is 100% unique, and you've got to play that landing out based on what that fish is telling you.
Yeah.
Is now again, tournament wise, you have a net or no net. That's obviously a huge difference, right? But I think the fish is good. Not every. I mean, they all got different kind of personalities. Like. Sometimes you can get that fish in the boat a little more aggressively. Sometimes you got to play that fish out. I was just kind of talking about how Kyle's struggling with hookups.
Yeah.
And I 100% think that's your nature is.
And it could be. And I like a heavier rod as well. And most times my rod selection is heavier than what some other guys are.
Oh, I know, Robert.
The reason I throw it on the 7.6 medium light is that in my mind. But I'm so used to setting that hook sweep hard with a single swim bait,
right?
Because that's what in my hand is what it.
Yep.
Sometimes I think I'm doing.
I almost fish it more like a sea hook, where you don't even set the hook, you just reel down and let the hook kind of do its work, and then it's just the slow and methodical. And yeah, I mean it's a smallmouth, right? If they come up and they shake or whatever, but I'm just like, I think they get the bait a little deeper this way. It's a little bit less aggressive. You're not ripping that hook out of whatever skin it might have had.
Yep.
And then you're letting the rod do a lot of the work. And you're coming, I do fish it on braid with a floor leader.
Yep.
So take that for whatever it's worth.
There's a lot of valid points there for sure.
So
there you go.
Stu Martell, are we going to see a Lake Geneva head-to-head in 2023? No. No, we've got a lot of projects going on, and we probably have to have a head-to-head show at some point, but we'll get to that.
If Stu wants to do a proficient on Lake Geneva in 2023.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let us know. Reach out.
So let's real quick. We got a couple minutes here. Let's talk about fixed TV for a few minutes. Yep. And if people want to see more smallmouth talk, we can do. I mean, we do 3 of these a week, so we can keep talking about smallies. Sure. I know Kyle will talk about smallies every day of the week.
Yeah, next week we actually have another TRS angler coming in. Andrew Banky next Friday is going to come in, and we can, maybe see if Gary's available too to get.
Gary should definitely.
Us 3 maybe can just sit and just banter back and forth about smallmouth would be pretty awesome. But Andrew's coming in. He's fishing the Major League Fishing invitationals next year.
Oh,
so
awesome.
It'd be cool to have him in here. But yeah, back to
No,
Fix
so
TV.
just Fix TV for just a quick minute. We've got, I think we should talk. I think we should use this show a little bit to talk about some of the stuff we're doing, because this is how a lot of this shit's, kind of spawned over the years, right?
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about what we were just talking about. It's not really released yet, but that's kind of what this show has always been about.
For sure.
Right? So what do we got? What do we got coming down the pipeline for content creators on Fix TV? Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
So we're kind of opening the door, so to speak, and looking for some of these people that have maybe not hit it quite big on YouTube, right? They don't have millions and millions of people following them, but they want to create content and they want to turn their passion and their hobbies into a way to maybe make a little bit of extra money and kind of, fund some of their hobbies and stuff. So we're actually allowing or reaching out and kind of finding, and if anybody wants to contact us, we'll be happy to talk to them and look at it, but allowing them to submit their content to Fix TV, and we can put it on our platform for their fans to have an easy place to watch all their content, to learn from them, to interact with them, to just, be able to get their shows up on TVs, on smartphones, on whatever. So,
what I think the big thing is that the way we have it structured is they'll be able to make money a lot faster
Yes.
than YouTube.
yes.
I mean, just call it out, right?
From day one.
From day one.
From day one,
You will
100%.
make more. The way we have this structured is if you're interested in building content, we're not stopping anybody from putting free stuff on YouTube.
Right.
I mean, YouTube's huge.
Yeah,
It's
keep
like
doing
the
it.
number 2 largest search engine on the planet, right?
Yep.
Not arguing that. But you need millions of views at a fractions of pennies to make any real money on YouTube, right?
Yep.
Like, I know guys who have pushing 30,000 followers. They make a couple grand a month. That's fantastic. It is not as easy as you think to get 30,000 subscribers on YouTube. No. That's not an easy thing to do.
Right. And it's not easy to make money off it because if you get shadow banned or you get
Well, the reason I'm doing this, a lot of the reason I'm doing this is because the Second Amendment stuff is all under attack all the time.
Right.
And obviously I own a gun store and we sell guns and I hunt and fish, that's what I do. So a big part of Fix TV is giving people a platform that they might get demonetized on a YouTube because they go out there and they kill something and some tree hugger out there thinks that's cruel.
Right.
Well, whatever, that's their right. YouTube can do whatever it wants to do. But we're creating a platform where if a guy wants to shoot guns on there every day and talk about, there's limits, right? Like, we're not going to go into some negative stuff, right? But if they want to shoot guns on there and they want to hunt stuff, they want to whatever, I mean, it's kind of an open platform for that kind of stuff, not needing to worry about being demonetized.
Yeah, and it's a great place for people to come and get educated. Like we talked about Proficient. That's on there. You want to watch a show where you can learn and be a part of something and have interaction. It's going to be an awesome place for that to happen.
Yeah, and there's going to be, I mean, our progression through this is to get a lot of people that we think align with kind of our similar beliefs that produce good quality content. So it's not going to be fluff. It's not going to be things that, you're not going to find value in. We're really
and it doesn't have to be hunting and fishing either.
True. Yeah,
that's
true.
what we talk about. But
Yep.
Andy's been talking about airsoft stuff because they got problems trying to do, because people think it's promoting, violence and whatever, right? Like, whatever, that's a whole nother show, right? But it doesn't, it's like, even if you know somebody who's got a little niche in knitting, I don't care.
Yeah.
The whole concept of Fix, the PHYX, the whole concept of Fix was to get your fix, right? Like, that was the whole thing.
Oh yeah.
Short of putting a needle in somebody's arm, right?
I remember the 3 weeks of coming up with that.
Right, like that was the whole thing. But I think it's important. Like we're on an outdoor channel right now talking about fishing.
Yep.
But I think it's important for people to know that it doesn't have to be fishing content. Like, you could be into model cars. You could be into, like, we even talked, you said you got a company that they do model stuff or whatever, right? Like, so it can be a lot of those different kinds of things that all have a place, because there's like Scott Stadler, not Scott, what's his name? Stadler.
Zach?
No, the one that fishes. Rich
Rick
Sadler makes tops and stuff, right? Like there's a million niches with a million people that all support those niches that now can have a place to go with, that don't have to worry about all the other noise, and be able to make money faster off of a smaller group of people.
Yeah. And I mean, it's our program, it's pretty competitive. It's very aggressive.
Well,
so if you're a content creator,
it's extremely aggressive.
It's a very lucrative thing if you want to put the time in and be a part of it. So,
and another big difference to have something that works going up against YouTube, right, is we're going to be ad free within that show.
Yep.
So once your show starts, there's no ads within it. A 3-minute break, a 5-minute break, a 15-minute break of not even what you were even watching.
Now shows can have sponsors.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like if you have a show and you want to have some sponsors and say this show is brought to you by, there's no rules against that. We're just talking. There's no like inserted commercial breaks.
Yeah, you're not going to get a Tide Pod commercial.
Well, I think if you watch, speaking of hunting shows, you watch a hunting show, it's 50% commercials. They're terrible.
Right.
They're absolutely terrible to
Facebook
watch.
and everything else now, everything's about ads.
Yep.
We're not gonna sit here and say there may not be a play-in ad that you got to watch before the video starts at some point. We hope we get to that point, right? To get a sponsor
or we just have enough subscribers. I'd rather have enough subscribers. We don't have to worry about it.
Right. Yep. And like Lance said, it's very lucrative for the content creators to want to come to our platform. I've had a couple conversations that have been awesome. None that we're going to announce yet, but coming soon, you're going to start seeing some awesome things on Fix TV. And the app is awesome.
It works great.
You can watch it on your phone. You can take it with you anywhere now.
Yep.
It works great.
You don't need a desktop or a laptop to do it.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I guess we'll wrap this one up for today. I'd like to thank everybody that joined in. All the comments are great. All you guys for watching. That was fantastic. If you want to see another smallmouth one, just shoot us a message either on Fix TV or any of the TRS stuff. Head on over to Fix TV. Do us all a favor. At least follow the Facebook page. If you don't want to subscribe yet, that's fine. There's a 7-day free trial, correct?
Just try it. Yep, 7 days.
Well, there's a 7-day free trial, but just like and follow the Fix TV stuff on Facebook or Instagram, just so you can kind of stay up with this stuff. Because I know there's not a ton of content on there yet, but there's a lot coming.
Yeah, there's a lot coming. That is the focus for the foreseeable future.
Yep. And any subscribers we do get, obviously we really appreciate that, and you're really helping push this whole train forward. So thank you.
Yes, sir.
Are you guys got anything else?
Got nothing.
All right. With that, hopefully Matt's back on Monday and he's feeling better.
Happy New Year this weekend, everybody.
Yep, sounds good. Oh yeah, try to survive New Year's. That's right.
We
I forgot
didn't
about
talk
New
about
Year's.
that, but just be careful.
I'm so over New Year's. I'm too old for that shit.
I'll be spending it with nieces and nephews and getting screamed at and kicked in the face and
that sounds like fun.
Having fun as an uncle. So I'm looking forward to it, to be honest.
Perfect. All right. Sounds good, everybody. See ya.
Thanks.